Hey, welcome to another episode of Q&A with Jay. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that is not very fun. At least it's not fun to have to do, but if you're a manager of people or you run a company, at some point you're probably going to have to let someone go. You're going to have to fire them. Let's just call it what it is. And the question today is, what have you learned about firing? So when I have to let somebody go, I feel like that was a personal failure on my part. I hired the wrong person, I didn't create enough clarity, I didn't build the right team around them, I didn't give them the right tools. I always assume that it's my fault, which is not good and not healthy. So if you're like me and you're a 3 on the Enneagram, be careful about that. But here's what I have learned as it relates to firing. First of all, I fire people very slowly, sometimes painfully slowly. Some people disagree with this. I don't really care. It's how I think a company should be run and what I have seen to be successful. Here's why I fire as slowly as possible. Because I hired them in the first place. And if I hired somebody in the first place, it is my responsibility to make sure that it is not my fault or that person's leader's fault or the company as a whole's fault that that person is not doing a good job. That starts with consistent communication. So what I've learned is before firing somebody, there needs to be a lot of communication. Have you even talked to the person that you're struggling with why you're going to let them go? Now, there are some reasons that I believe you should fire somebody instantaneously or very close to that. If somebody steals from the company, they should be fired immediately. If somebody is gossiping about the team internally, I actually think they should be fired immediately as well. If there's some kind of like major distrust, obviously any kind of abuse or harassment that's very serious, things like that, those are reasons for immediate termination. But in almost every other case, which thankfully is most cases, communication is where it starts. So all of our team members have a bi-weekly one-on-one with their direct report. They meet with somebody and they talk about what they see that's working, that's broken, that's missing, and confused. And their direct report has the opportunity to talk to them. On at least a quarterly basis, I meet with every team member internally and I get feedback from them. What do they think I should start doing? What do they think I should stop doing? And I give them some feedback. Hey, here's where I see your role. Here's where I see things that are working really well. Here's where I think are areas of improvement. Now, if we have conversations around things that need to be areas of improvement, they should be based around some kind of a written document. Now, I addressed this in our Achieving Top Goals video, and it's about having a KRA, or a key result area, written up for that team member. That document should outline what success looks like for that person. You should each be able to look at that and go, hey, is this success or not? Now, if everything on that sheet is red, or close to it, and you have a conversation about that, and nothing happens, there has to be a next step. Well, often for me, the next step is some kind of an email. It's a written communication. Here, hey, we talked about this. I'm still seeing these issues. What are you doing to improve them? And how can I help remove a roadblock to help you improve? Now, there should be some kind of response to that. And if we still aren't seeing traction, the very final step that I will do before I let somebody go is essentially write what I consider to be a probation letter. Now, that letter is basically a formal document saying, hey, we've talked about these things in person, we've reviewed them in an email, here's a specific outline of the areas that I see that need improvement in order to maintain this role. Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to let you go. Now, in most cases, if it gets to the point where I have to write that letter, that person does not usually make it much longer. But that's okay. Like that, at some point, everybody that started with your company is not going to be there at the end. And you should handle that really gracefully, and you should handle it really quickly. So the last step, when you actually go, all right, I have no choice, I have to let this person go. A couple things should happen. One, you should do it pretty quickly at that point because you've already had a long time period of communicating, both in verbally, in writing in a casual email form, and more formally in a written letter. And that person needs to be let go at that point as quickly as possible. And you don't need to get into the emotions behind it all. As a leader, that person is probably, as much as you don't want to have to do that, and as much as it sucks for you to have to fire that person, it is a lot worse for that person because they don't have a job at the end of the day and you still do. So you need to realize that when you get to that point where you have to let that person go, that you're about to create a very memorable, very negative experience for them most likely, and you should handle them in the most professional way possible. You should have it in writing with regards to why they're being terminated, and you should have it in writing with regards to what they are getting for leaving. Maybe they're getting nothing. Maybe you're giving them some kind of severance. It's going to depend on probably your original contract and just what you believe is right in that scenario. I always believe in erring on the side of grace. And one other thing that I didn't address earlier that I think really matters is at the very beginning of the conversation, if somebody's really struggling inside the business, it's good to approach them and be like, hey, is everything okay? Like, how's life? Because who knows, maybe their kid is really sick and you don't know about it. Maybe their mom just died and you never heard about it. Maybe they're having a very serious marital situation that's affecting their work environment. And if that's happening, we need to show them a little bit of grace. But even at that very end, when we decide we have to let that person go, do that quickly, gracefully, and clearly. And however they respond with severe emotion or not, it is not your place to respond to that. You also probably should not do that in private. You need somebody else to be witness to that scenario for your own protection individually and for the company as a whole. So that's not a very fun topic to talk about today, but at some point, if you run a business long enough, you're going to get to a place where you have to do that. And ultimately, what I want in those scenarios, and I really believe, is to go, hey, I want to put this person in a place where they can actually succeed, and right here is not where that is. So, thanks for being here for another episode of Q&A with Jay. If you have ideas on how to fire people well, leave them in the comments, or if you have other questions you want me to answer on other shows, I'd be happy to do that. I'll see you soon.